the notes because I think it's still important to start off the session with some important points. To the rest of you guys, industry leaders, fellow change makers, it's an honor to speak with you today at the ASEAN Energy Business Forum, and to do so right before a panel that will dive deeper into one of ASEAN's defining strategic opportunities, which is how do we decarbonize our industrial parks while powering growth? At UEM Group, through our entities like UEM Lestra, UEM Sunrise, UEM Agenta, and our ecosystem of engineering and asset management companies, we've come to see that sustainability is no longer just an environmental obligation. It's fast becoming a strategic capability, one that determines which economies and which countries will win the next industrial cycle. So let's begin by taking a wider view. Across the world, nations are repositioning their industrial policies around energy transition. And the evidence is clear. Integration wins. Take the port of Rotterdam. Once one of Europe's largest CO2 emitters, by far. The port has undergone a remarkable transformation since. According to the EU's emissions trading system, the CO2 emissions at the port of Rotterdam in 2023 alone fell by 10% or 2.2 million tons compared to 22. So when you compare that against 2016, emissions have now reduced by more than 30%. So if you imagine the entire industrial cluster to reduce the emissions by 30%, I think that's a big deal. But how did they do it? What makes this achievement particularly powerful? It's not just the deployment of individual technologies. And we need to think about this when you hear me talking about these points from the context of ASEAN and Malaysia. How they did it was basically including the likes of renewable energy, hydrogen infrastructure, and shared CO2 transport networks that connect industries and enable collective decarbonization. I'll give you another example of China. In China, industrial electrification and systematic waste heat recovery are being promoted across coastal and heavy industry zones. I don't believe we are speaking enough about recovering waste heat. It's basically just industrial heat basically wasted into the atmosphere. These are measures that reduce exposure to fossil fuel price swings as well, let alone improving energy efficiency. Just to give you a gauge, we all know how big China is. So with the introduction of cogeneration or waste heat systems, they've already achieved 60% utilization. So that's already a significant achievement in itself. So what I'm trying to say here is, the message is quite consistent. Green competitiveness, as Dato' Amran also mentioned during his keynote speech on the first day, is important. It's a game changer. Green competitiveness is not about subsidies or moral aspiration. It's about systemic efficiency and future cost leadership. That's the shift that ASEAN must embrace, moving from isolated renewable energy projects, as we can probably see in Malaysia, to integrated low-carbon industrial ecosystems. And the good news is, it's already happening, this shift. In Singapore, Jurong Island Sustainable Energy and Chemicals Park integrates shared utilities, hydrogen-ready pipelines, and carbon capture infrastructure. It's proof that decarbonization and industrial productivity can coexist. In Vietnam, VSIP 3 in Binh Duong is one of the industrial parks to combine rooftop and utility-scale solar, backed by direct power purchase agreements. If you think in the context of Malaysia, even the very basic combination of utility and rooftop solar, we don't have that at scale yet in industrial parks. So there's a lot to catch up. In Thailand, the Eastern Economic Corridor is embedding EV supply chains, low-carbon logistics, and hydrogen infrastructure in its smart zone plans. In the Philippines, New Clark City was designed as a greenfield example of district cooling, renewable energy, and waste-to-energy integration. And Indonesia, Batam and Riau Islands are piloting solar and battery clusters, targeting cross-border exposure to Singapore. So you can see very clearly the theme is integrating multiple different systems. We have been spending and investing a lot of money, a lot of capital, a lot of manpower resources into building isolated systems. We need to think about or talk about integration from now on. Even in Malaysia, we're seeing this momentum. There's some momentum, but I think there's space for us to improve. In projects like Kulim High Tech Park, for example, or UEM Lestra's hybrid solar and cooling initiatives, and even Sam Darby's Korean Integrated Green Industrial Park, now positioned as a regional anchor for green manufacturing. Each of these examples points to one truth, and I repeat, to one truth that I mentioned earlier. The region's green transformation is real, but fragmented. We're going to waste our efforts if we don't integrate. And the integration here remains the missing piece. But let me dive deeper into the word integration itself. I've been using it quite a fair bit so far. It's about bringing together three different systems that usually operate in silos. The first part, the energy system. Renewable, resilient, and intelligently managed energy system. Think hybrid solar with storage. Think about district cooling. Think about smart microgrids, all tied into digital energy management platforms. That's one system, the energy system. The second system is the infrastructure system, beyond energy. We're talking about the infrastructure system being connected and circular. A keyword there is also circular. Industrial parks can share utilities, recycle water, reuse heat, and manage waste collectively. Globally, this kind of integrated or shared infrastructure design can cut life cycle costs by 15 to 25%. And lastly, but not the least, is the innovation and finance system. If you've had the opportunity to sit through the different sessions so far throughout the forum, at this level, AEBF, we've spoken enough about the finance system. There's a lot of discussions around finance system. But if you go to iGEM downstairs, if you notice, there's only a few banks that show up. And a lot of them are traditional and conventional banks. So we need to think about innovation and finance system from a digital and catalytic angles. Through tools like digital twins, carbon tracking, green financing, and from green bonds to blended finance, we can make decarbonisation bankable. A lot of the discussion on this floor, whether in bigger sessions or in closed doors, a lot of the discussions have been around how to make investments, or rather, capital investments and infrastructure investments bankable. It's a very common theme that we need to look into a lot deeper. When these systems are integrated, the result is what I call a bankable, decarbonized industrial ecosystem. Without integration, we get fragmented pilots. That will be a waste of space and effort. With integration, we build competitiveness and unlock the scale investors are waiting for, the billion-dollar scale that most investors are waiting for. And I must highlight, even in Malaysia alone, the government-linked investment funds, they alone present multiple billion opportunities, not just for Malaysia, but for Southeast Asia. So we are flushed, the financial system is flushed with liquidity. We should take opportunity with the availability of the capital. Now let me bring this closer to home and to what we're trying to build at UEM Group in particular. We see Malaysia as a natural testbed for ASEAN's green industrial transition, and UEM Lestra as the energy integrator enabling that. Within the UEM ecosystem, the building blocks already exist. We are fortunate to have built such building blocks and having them in our portfolio. First, for example, UEM Lestra develops renewable and cooling assets that form the energy backbone of industrial developments. I must mention within UEM Lestra's group of companies, there are also other relevant subsidiaries like Nur Power, like Synergy, and Rodamas. Secondly, UEM Sunrise brings master planning capabilities, designing for sustainability and connectivity from the ground up. Thirdly, Opus and as part of UEM Agenda, provide digital and lifecycle asset management, turning infrastructure data into efficiency gains. And UEM Group's partnership itself with our parent, Khazanah Nasional, aligns this with Malaysia's broader national energy transition roadmap. I'll give you an example of how we're integrating all this together. In Kulim High-Tech Park, we're exploring how hybrid solar generation, district cooling, and smart infrastructure can form a very, very replicable model across the entire country. I'm not sure if you know, by definition, we have more than 600 industrial parks in Malaysia, 200 of which owned by the government or government-related entities. So imagine the opportunity there. So an integrated industrial ecosystem is required, not just an energy project. That's the kind of template we believe ASEAN can scale. So here's the call to action. As we look ahead, the real question is not whether ASEAN will decarbonize its industrial base, it's how fast and how coordinated we can do it. To accelerate, I see 3 imperatives for the region. Number 1, policy alignment, unsurprisingly. Cross-border renewable energy trade, open access, and direct PPAs are vital. ASEAN's power grid must evolve from just a national effort to a regional logic. Second, capital innovation, blended finance, green bonds, transition credit mechanism must move from concept to deployment. First movers need de-risking. The session next door is talking about transition mechanism, so we should take advantage of learning more about that. And thirdly, coalition building. Industrial decarbonization isn't a solo act. Developers, utilities, financiers, and governments need to line around bankable, scalable green zones, not one-off pilots. If ASEAN can do that, we won't just meet our climate targets, we'll redefine our competitiveness in the global supply chains. As you can see today, the US-China trade war and also post-COVID implications, the global supply chains are disrupted or at the very least stirred and shaken in a big way. ASEAN must band together to build a more cohesive ecosystem. Let me close with this thought. In the 1980s and 1990s, ASEAN's industrial parks powered manufacturing growth. In the 2000s, they anchored urbanization and FDI. It's true across all ASEAN countries. Now in the 2020s, they must become the platform for decarbonized growth. It must be a new thematic, or rather sustained thematic, where renewables, infrastructure, and innovation converge. At UEM Group and UEM Lestra, we are ready to play our part as system integrators of that future, because ultimately this isn't just about energy transition. It's about industrial renewal, it's about building that regional competitiveness, and of course, long-term prosperity. Let's build that green industrial backbone together. Thank you.